Hello! In the last episode, we learned how to write the function sum of two numbers. Also, we did learn how to write unit tests to test our function. In this episode, we're gonna learn to write how to write two methods, two functions. The first one is called SumArray. That's gonna take as an input an array and compute all the values inside the array, all the elements, sums them up and return the result. For example, here we're going to take all these elements, 3 plus 0 plus 4 plus 2. This is going to be equal 9. It should return a value that is equal to 9. Here are some unit tests to test this function. The second function that we're going to also be writing today is called countEven. It's going to count how many even numbers we have in an array. So we're going to have an array as an input to this function countEven, and it's going to count how many even numbers. In this case, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, so it should be 3 elements. Here I made a mistake. In this case, we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 4, and for an empty array, it's going to be 0 even numbers. So let's get started. Let's create this function first. We're going to come here, create this function. It's going to take as an input array. So let's create a variable called result. This is going to represent the result of the computation of the sum of all the elements. Let's return it. So the idea is we're going to have an array of elements. For example, 1, 2, and 3. This should give us 6. But in order to compute all these elements, we need to loop into the array element by element. So we're going to start from the beginning, the first element, add it to result, then add 2, then add this one. And at the end, we need to return result. To loop into an array, we're going to use the syntax for. So this is the syntax that we use in order to loop into an array. So for element of array. This means that we're going to go into the array element by element, and this is going to represent, this variable element is going to represent the elements of the array. So each time we're going to have this element, we're going to take result equal to result plus element. And at the end we return result. This syntax is cool, but we can write it a little bit better. So we can write result equals plus equal elements, which means that we're going to all the time add up to results the elements that we take from the array. Let's write the second function. The second function is called countEven. So let's create this function, export function countEven. It's going to take as well an array, and then let's create a variable called result. I'm going to initiate it with 0. Let's return it for now. So in order to count how many even numbers we have in the array, we need to do basically the same. We're going to loop into the array element by element, and each element we're going to check if it is an even number. If it is an even number, then we're going to increment the result. Let's call it count instead of result, because it makes more sense. So we're going to do a for const element of array. So we're going to loop into the array element by element, and we need to check if this element is even. So we need to do a check with if. So we're going to take element, and we're going to divide it by 2 and see how much the rest is. If the rest is equal to 0, then it is an even number, and in this case we're gonna increment count. So if the result of dividing elements by 2 and the rest from this computation is 0, then we're gonna know that elements is even, and then in this case we're gonna increment count. So if these two functions are successfully implemented, the test is gonna be also successful. So let's try this. Let's try to run the test. And just before running the test, we need to import these functions here because I didn't yet. So I am importing some array, and let's import count even. So let's run these tests. Npm run test, and as you can see, guys, this is the test of summing the values of the array, which correspond to these. Here, as you can see, all of them are successful, and also the count of even numbers in the array. So this is the results. Let's commit these changes. Sum array and count even. By the way, all this implementation, I'm gonna link in the description to have the implementation from my GitHub repository. Nice. Now it's saved. Let's discuss a little bit what we have done, and let's discuss a little bit the complexity of these algorithms. So this algorithm sum array, for example, it takes an array and it loops elements by elements and then does the computation. The complexity of this function is very corresponding to how many elements we have in the array. If we have, for example, 2 elements, we're going to loop 2 times into the array and then just do two operations. If we have, for example, 100 elements, we're going to do it 100 times, and each time we need to do this operation. If we have 1,000,000 times, then it's 1,000,000 times. Let's represent how many elements we have in the array and call it n. If the n is how many elements in the array, then the complexity of this algorithm is, we're gonna call it big O of n. So this notation represents what is the complexity of the algorithm. In the future, I'm just gonna be speaking and saying, oh, like this algorithm is gonna be of the complexity O(n) or O(n) square or something like that. And this is a way to speak in a very efficient way. And this means, for example, here that we're gonna have a loop and we're gonna run into an array that contains n elements, and this is the complexity. This algorithm also, it takes an array and the same, we're gonna loop elements by elements in order to verify each element if it's even to do this operation. So the complexity of this one is also corresponding and dependent on how many elements in the array, which is, if we call it n, it's gonna be O of n. So this is a little bit sneak of the complexity of algorithms. We're gonna have more of this in the coming videos. So thank you for watching this video and see you next time.